But I ended up writing a poem, which I would like to share it with you today, or at least I hope it is one that qualify as such. And it's part of a series of texts which I'm working on, and maybe we can talk about this later. The title of the poem is still Labor of Listening, and I would like to dedicate it to Marina Vishmet. Okay. The dead, they have a plan, and their plan is simple. It's called sumud, to stand fast and start all over again. The dead, they direct us to the open graves, violated and desecrated by bulldozers. A severed hand, a mutilated tongue, a stained truth beside a suitcase of books. The dead, they are hungry and they have a plan. Their plan is to summon us to the soil, where they are not buried anymore, and insist that we stand fast and start from there all over again. Haven't written for a while, but you crossed my mind today. My earache made me think of you. It's a pain that has worsened since the genocide in Gaza began. Basically, my ear's anvil has decided to reject every sound it receives and hearken instead to what is buried inside. For there are infra-signals around me everywhere I go, in the U-Bahn announcements, in my upstairs neighbor's creaking floorboard, and in the cold, abstract conversations with German leftists. In the silence carved out from hours of talks while avoiding acrobatically the word Palestine. Sometimes my anvil suspends everything that hits my eardrum. Other times it runs madly like an emergency alarm signal, or like a paramedic in Khan Yunis frantically searching for the missing. It's painful, but it has made me realize that what is buried deep in everything I hear are not whispers of some ghosts, but the unvoiced longing toward a truer world. This is the longing that W.E.B. Du Bois heard in sorrow songs, echoing through melodies passed down from the enslaved ancestors. To speak to the dead means to undo the function of my ear such that the tiniest bones in my body can transmit this unvoiced longing. Everything meaningful I can think of about the word solidarity resides in this longing. Is this earache familiar to you? Anyway, to speak any other language than the language of the dead today is to participate in the ongoing crime. The dead, the unburied dead, they can never be annihilated, even though our enemy continues to be victorious. Their language is that of the tiniest imperishable life forms persistently sending signals from beneath the earth. How's your progress with learning going anyways? Mine is pretty bumpy. I learned a new word recently though. It's called architecture. When Imam Mersal had to give a lecture in English for the first time, she thought of a trick like any migrant would. Migrants learn to become tricksters. Their tricks subvert the humiliation of being forced to speak a language that continuously infantilizes them. Marcel's trick was to write down the difficult English words in Arabic script so as to visualize them in the reassuring shape of a familiar language. Sorry. The most difficult one was the word architecture. So she wrote it down with alif, ra, kaf, ya, ta, kaf, ta, sheen, ra. At the critical moment, she tripped over the word. What happened then, she writes, was that a mosque, an Umayyad mosque specifically, seemed to be collapsing somewhere. The sound of its broken glass windows issuing on the thread of my voice. I keep thinking about the sound of destruction buried in the word architecture, which no one seems to hear. I keep thinking about the Arabic letters that hide in the English word, which no one seems to see except for the dying angels around her in that lecture hall. Architecture, the way it broke in Marcel's voice, is the word I learned. It's not exactly a word, but a heap of rubble. Yet, it captures eloquently the colonial violence in 4 broken syllables. I mean, the violence of an empire turning a deaf ear to the jarring destruction, busy building its ruinous towers all the while. I wish, when made to speak English, my voice, much like Marcel's, would break with the sound of the shattered glass of homes in Dir el-Balah and Tell el-Hawa. In your last letter, you wrote that the language of the dead is devoid of words, yet it can be heard when our words crack open under the dead weight they carry. Isn't the unvoiced longing, literally, this dead weight you were talking about, the true substance of history? Deep inside any modernity lies buried a crime, a mass of ruthlessly destroyed lives, their longing toward a truer world still pushing and pushing through language. I'm keeping the red stain on my face, and I spin in half circles to the messy rhythm in my ear, the dead. They sing with severed tongues, and they have a plan to bring us back to the land despite their killers. Do you remember the stone I wrote you about? I woke up this morning and I found it again in my palm. I felt its soft surface, and I knew this time that it was not a relic of my childhood when I was smashing windows with my angry friends, but another childhood, now buried beneath the rubble of Gaza, coiled into itself. There is a line by Itil Adnan that says, "To live by night is to live by ear, and the eye will follow." I find it very helpful line in this endless night. For what makes the night is not the absence of light, but the mass of destroyed lives, heaps of rubble and unrealized longings. These nocturnal beings linger and persist. They insist on their belonging to this world and continue to exert their demands upon it, day and night. It is thus time to start living by ear and listen to their unvoiced longings. It is time to unwitness the fascist crime committed in the brightest hour of every day. The white light has simply become a white supremacist. Its sole purpose is to safeguard border control or the gates of settlements. Prisoners confined to minuscule cells and subjected to relentless glare of 500-watt fluorescent bulbs know how dead and dark light can be. My friends are dead, and they have a simple plan. But simple is not easy. It's not easy to mourn the cities. It's not easy to go into hiding. Instead of accounting for the criminal light that everyone sees, it's easier rather to wait for the end of the world. But that's not the plan. The plan is to start from the darkness, underneath the soil. Deep in the open wounds, there is something awaiting us. Tiny germs that will immunize us against complicity. For sumud isn't a steadfastness that maintains the status quo, but a stubborn glitch in it. Sumud is actually to become stone on expropriated land. I imagine that stones were once eyes who had silently and fiercely kept track of history since time immemorial. And because they never blinked, they became petrified. A stone is a negation of everything the bourgeoisie calls nature. The land we are summoned to is not nature. It is the sedimentation of struggles against naturalized violence. Sprouting from it are hardened stones that stick in the throats of those who use hunger as a weapon. I clenched my palm firmly and applied a magic trick I learned from my sheikh. When I opened it again, the stone had become a word. Its 4 letters shivered every time I touched them. The ra, the fa, the ain, the ta. I kept the consonants for myself and carefully buried the vowels, which no one seems to see, in various corners of the city. Then I stood by in the dark, heart racing, waiting for the earth to tremble. I stood awaiting the roar of detonation that would shatter the eardrums of genocide apologists. I stood awaiting for the dead humanity drenched in salt and face down on the shores of the Mediterranean to come back to life. But instead, I heard a bulldozer. They are building a lot in the city these days, transforming parts of their financialized capital into empty houses. People like you and me can only work on their construction sites, but cannot set foot into the buildings once they are built. I wish I could describe to you properly the ear-splitting clamor of steel blades digging in the soil's rocky crust. A monotonous, overstimulating pulse interrupted by short pauses in which the blades are cooled with water from a sprinkler hose. Now I need to drink water, sorry. A monotonous, overstimulating pulse interrupted by short pauses in which the blades are cooled with water from sprinkler hose. But it's not exactly the sound of the engine nor the stabbing of the blades that I would like to describe to you. What I would like to describe is what surplus value sounds like. If property could speak, it would do so in this grammar: a long series of shocks maintained by an efficient cooling system that prevents an insurrection and resurrection. It is an omnipresence that shields the earth and shocks the nerves, leaving no room for any signal approaching from the past or the future. another form of architecture. The land, the driver, the machine, the water, the subsoil, the topsoil, and me, who cannot think about anything else right now, have all become mute, yet we are all enlisted in a monstrous sentence. Property speaks in a language that can eloquently replace financialized capital with settler colonial capital, replace the cooling system with anti-riot cops, replace the worker sitting in the cabinet with a soldier desecrating graves, or even can replace both of them with the dead, for that matter, because all plans can be hijacked easily in the genocidal superstructure of this language. All plans. One thing I would like to ask you though, what might a truer world look like to you? I mean, sound like? What content of truth is transmitted through the unvoiced longing? In the meanwhile, I will stand fast and start all over again. I will rub the consonants against my flesh and seed the vowels, hoping next time to hear the detonation. We'll keep you posted. Thank you.
So I just would like to share some reflection and ask also Haytham to elaborate a bit more. The first time that I met you, Haytham, it was because you gave me as a gift your book, How to Disappear. It was a very, very nice way to know each other. And How to Disappear is a book that was published back in 2018.
Starting from 2013.
2013, yes. And it was published by the independent no-profit publishing house, Kaifata, yeah, Arabic. And How to Disappear is a set of exercises that are proposed to a reader who is also a listener. And this set of exercises show how to disappear, or how to reappear, how to leave a group, to join a group. And it's also a set of exercises that are an invitation to put attention on details, on the private and public experience of the sound space, on her own voices, on the sound of the voice from the outside, on what you call the lamp of forgotten moments, that are the residues of feelings and memories that are composing also our perception of the reality, so our listening as a situated person, first of all. And what really impacted me was to meet an ideal listener as a figure of background, background figure. So as someone who also is active, involved to disappear in order to also be an active part of her space, of her reality, of her daily life. And I would like to connect also this book with your most recent publication, the Book of Sleep, published in 2020. When you talk of to dream and to sleep, that if our activities collectively lived and also sort of lived universally in a sort of way, can open us the possibilities to feel a common sense of existence and dissolve the limits of the self. And he also connecting us this active passivity of sleeping and dreaming with the poetry and with literature, because these are practices that, if lived also collectively, experienced collectively, can overcome the logic of the cause and effect, and impacting more strongly the daily life, maybe, rather than other kind of activities. And this resonates with me with a concept proposed by a poetess and writer and translator to whom Massimo Bartolini often refers, who is Cristina Campo. When she talked about the concept of synthesis, because the concept of synthesis is something connected to the ritual sense of poetry and of literature, that is not a matter of fruition, rather it's a matter of practice, because it's in the performance of our body and our voices that our body and our voice become instruments to reach a collective sense of existence, where the elements are multiple but not disconnected. This is something that she referred to as a synthesis. She says is a sentimento della vita rarefatto e intensificato. And I wanted to ask you to elaborate a bit this idea of active passivities, and if you want just to, I think that it is very evident also in your reading that you shared with us. I don't want to comment on that because I don't feel I can comment on a reading. Yes, so I just wanted to ask you, yes, if you want to share with us some more insights about this idea and feeling of practice activities.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just wondering, when did it start? But it really started since long time, that I became interested in a set of activities which are often described as passivities, right? And you mentioned a couple of examples, no, like listening versus talking, sleeping versus vigilance. The Book of Sleep is, yeah, like maybe like the last recent English publication, but in Arabic, my recent book actually came last year, and there my interest focus more on another form of passivity, which I call the category of the dead, which I understand, or I'm trying to develop or understand, not as an ontological category, but really as a political category. So yeah, you see, like, you know, like all these, you know, like figures, you know, like the listener, the sleeper, the reader, the dead. Yeah, they kind of, I feel they have something to say about the structure of our reality. And I feel, you know, like what they have to say is a kind of a critique to the structure of reality, which pushes them to the margin, or pushes them, you know, like to the space of to a marginal space. So these figures, they live in a liminal space, and the social structure deems this liminal space to something, you know, like unnecessary or marginal, or and I guess what kind of interests me a lot is to try to learn from this liminal space, and to learn from the possibilities which are inherent in this liminal space which is, not quite collaborating with the dominant structure, but at the same time, it's a space which doesn't have kind of a clear ideology, so politically, this became very interesting to me. Maybe like to be concrete a little bit, yeah. The practice of activities like like listening or sleeping, the collective practice of it is something which there are many ways to think about this, or like like to try to in a text form to resonate with it. But I guess what I was trying or interested in is that, if you consider the social experience, the shared social experience, which takes the form of language, for instance, or of, like social classes, or of, like the what we call social experience, like is structured through, like these things. And it's not, like the mathematical results of the different individuals, right? So, the practice of these activities, they kind of shift the attention to really what structure sociality, and kind of bring this into a moment of gravitylessness, right? For instance, sleep, right? Like, so there is, it would be really a big mistake to think that we can solve all our problems by sleeping, no? But yet, like there is a moment of gravitylessness which kind of necessary as a maybe, like a starting point to see that, like the status quo, shouldn't continue, or like can be, like something else. And with listening, I think, like there are a couple of things came together with listening. First, an interest in the sonorous space, and an interest in language, and an interest in the position of the listener, right? And all this kind of interest, developed further. Although like this book is maybe like 10 years ago or something. But as you see, like even in the texts which I work on recently, there's still these questions, or these attempts to approach sonorosity. I myself am not a musician at all, and I'm really I tried to learn bass guitar, but I'm really very bad in playing bass guitar, so this can tell you a lot about my but I think like sonorosity and the act of listening is fundamental for me, because even in the mechanics of listening, there is a form of translation, right? Like, because you have the eardrum, you have the anvil, you have the stirrup, like this is like the anatomy of the middle ear. And what happens is that, like a sound wave translates into a signal, nerve signal, translate into a meaning, translate into something. And translation, the way I understand it, means changing, like to take something and to change it to something else. And changing is a very active, very active. I want to say active activity, but then it sounds really horrible. But so changing means also not to accepting the status quo, right? So it seems to me, like what happens in the middle ear, what happens in the transmission, what happens in, like in listening as transmission, as translation, is very fundamental, because translation means that things can be different, or can be thought of differently, or can mean other things, or can, like all of these possibilities, they come from translation, from transmission. But I think now I'm going astray, so please.
No. And my second question is also connected to the last thing that you are elaborating, that is also connected to the text that you will share tomorrow with the class, with the workshop, and is a text by Iman Mersal, The Displaced Voice. When you when she argues that the voice of a person comes from the very energy of the mother tongue accent, so that the voice through the mother tongue accent refers to the foreign language via sabotage, which is something that I'm doing now. Very well. No, but I'm joking. I was just and I maybe also involve all of you, please, to contribute to this idea, this conversation. Also, Sandra, of course, because she's a very deep insight into the voice, and so also this sort of strategy, hidden strategy of the voice that every one of us has inside is an active passivity, but is always present, even beyond our intention. And this was something very interesting to me. I don't know if you want just to, There is someone who wants to say something about this point? Can you?
About this idea of a passive activity, I've always, and also you use the word sabotage right now. I am, for a while, I have been thinking about the idea of, especially in my research, it's predominantly around the coloniality, especially in the Atlantic, and I was thinking if the paradigm, the colonial paradigm, is about someone in a higher position profiting from the labor of someone that is put in a lower class. This idea of subtraction, this idea of passivity, this idea of really maybe in a system that is built on a forced participation, when this participation goes away, is subtracted from this equation, what happens? The system, like logically, one would say that the system would collapse in a way, and so I was really trying to think of this, if it's even possible, because I know that it might be maybe in some very specific cases, because the idea of taking oneself out of a system that is so pervasively trying to capture you and put you under in a certain state. And yeah, it was just I just wanted to ask you, what do you think about this, and if you have other perspectives around, or other thoughts around this idea of subtracting oneself from a paradigm that it is not for the subject.
Yeah, no, this is really a great question. I think, like it's necessary, like to overcome this, duality of passivity and activity, or participating and withdrawing, because of course, like in many contexts, it's very hard to take yourself out of a certain economy, right? Or you have to be privileged to take yourself out, right? But I think, there is maybe one way to put it, like there is a dialectics between, like these two poles, which looks like as two different poles and makes duality. But maybe, like there is a sense of dialects going on, because for instance, like one of the motivation to work on the Book of Sleep was actually the Egyptian revolution and what happened, and like the counter revolution, etc. So I guess, like one has to be careful not to turn into hysterical if one want to be all the time vigilant. And I think, like maybe it's helpful for political projects to realize, like the moments when there is a necessity to acknowledge that a break happened, like a big break happened, and that's why I think there's a difference between, acknowledging and accounting for defeat and being defeatist, right? Because, like to account and to realize that there is a defeat happened, and one has to go through this process of, like, okay, what should we do now? Because, like there is something big happened, This is not defeatist. I think it's more defeatist to carry on as if nothing happened, or it's yeah, I'm trying to find the psychoanalytic but yeah, you know what I mean, no? But again, I think this is really very important question, because these like these liminal spaces shouldn't be taken as, like something that is completely detached from the social fabric, or something that it is in opposition to something. Rather, it is like part of the social fabric, and it kind of moments of breaks or cracks that I think, like it's okay to have a crack, and it's okay to like to listen and not to talk all the time, yeah.
Thank you. I have a question for you, because I was thinking about what Pauline Oliveros has developed in terms of sonority of the dream, of the act of dreaming, and how much this moment is full of life. In fact, is a moment in which we are working a lot, even if not in a conscious level, if we would like to use this kind of paradigm that I'm not very interested in, have to say. But in any case, But what is really important about the work that Yona was doing with her, and she's still doing, is the possibility to think, to dream for someone else. So the idea that being together to connect the dream and the sleeping to a common dimension. So I'm wondering how your idea, your reflection on this notion can be connected with this idea of collectivity during the art of sleeping. Thank you.
Sure. Oh, it's raining, no? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like many things come to mind, no? First, the realm of dreams is different than, you know, like the subject of dream. When you dream, you in your dream is slightly different than you in the real life, right? And this shifting is not, you know, like a complete withdrawing from the symbolic order, the social symbolic order. Rather, it is kind of, you know, like a funny take on this social order, right? So when you dream, when an individual dream, you know, like still, this dream is part of the symbolic order, the social symbolic order, you know, like the order, the representation, the language which we are all part of. But what happens in dreams, first, you know, there is an interesting twist which can tell us a lot about how this social order is actually built. I mean, that's the task of the psychoanalysis, you know, that's or the claimed task of the psychoanalysis. But also, you know, like in times of wars and times of crisis, you know, there are a set of dreams which keeps, you know, like moving from one head to the next. You know, like I know this, for instance, you know, like from Egypt, where during the you know, like the difficult time, early time of revolution, you know, like many people had this dream of, you know, like escaping the police, running and escaping the police, and then entering a certain building, which they did not know before. And this kind of, you know, like very basic line of dream kept, you know, like repeating itself, of course, with different variations, right? Or even Beirut, you know, in 2006, and the sound of, you know, like detonation and missiles, and how these missiles kind of echo in dreams. So I think, you know, like the relationship between you know, dreams and the social order is way more complex than to think that they are just different realms, you know, like has nothing to do with each other. And that's why, you know, like there are you know, there are things happening in dream which concerns the language over which our social order is built, and they kind of can teach us that there is a problem somewhere which needs to be fixed, and this problem is not an individual problem, I believe, you know. Rather, there are ways to think about what the realm of dreams is, the dynamics and mechanics of the realm of dreams. There are ways to think of it as part of the social experience, which is a collective experience, right? Yeah, I don't know if.
Yeah, listening to Piersandra and connected to some thoughts that we shared this morning. The necessity of new narratives and the possibility of autofiction as a way to explore, to create a proliferation of new narratives. And I was thinking about also of Lost in Transition and dreaming as a collage, which is also feminist practice, and picking some okay, there is okay. Okay. Yeah, as a way of putting together different images, shots of images, and also it has to do with also listening and memories imprinting on our bodies that come up. And it is also political, I think, because it is a generative practice. And yeah, I was also thinking about my dreams these days. Death comes a lot, and yeah, mourning, and I think that this is something to listen to and share. And yeah, it. I was also looking before about hearability and visibility and how those dimensions are connected, and just sharing some thoughts. Thank you.
Some other comments or thought sharing on this? No?
I wanted to ask you, Haytham, because you have read during your poem a quote, I think it was, which was, "To live by night is to live by ear." And it reminded me a lot of the image of Bedouins, I don't know, going through desert, which have to listen very carefully. And I don't know, somehow it like turns on something in my mind about the language of a minority which is always voyaging and which is not the language of an institution. So I wanted to ask you if there is a connection between this concept and the Arabic heritage, because I've heard a lot of like Arabic imaginary during your poem, so I wanted to know a little bit more about it.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to? Yeah, the quote comes from Etel Adnan, and Etel Adnan is a Lebanese artist and writer. She passed away, I think 3-4 years ago, 2-3 years ago. And it comes from a poem by her called, I think the title is "To Live by the Night." That's the title. And yeah, you know, like I can understand, you know, like the association with, you know, like a certain culture or heritage, you know, where maybe listening, especially in the dark, plays, of course, you know, I don't know, plays, you know, like more fundamental role than the eye, right? I myself, I don't know from where comes this image to Etel Adnan, but the way I think about it, you know, is more, you know, at least in the text, you know, like is in context of, you know, what to do in this darkness. And this line by Itil Adnan seemed to me like, like can tell something about, like, because basically what the line says, like, you know, when the ears are open, eyes will follow, right? And it kind of, like, you know, it touched me deeply because like it's as if she was I mean, Itil Adnan is somebody who's dead, right? And it seemed as if like the words of what she had said, like has something to say about the current moment, or a moment where there is an extreme darkness and there is an extreme, where the light turns to be supremacist, like where the light, which is kind of the tool for, like looking or, like thinking or, etc., turned out to be actually, like something very, evil. So what does this mean? Like, of course, this does not mean that, oh, we don't need our eyes, etc. No, it just means, like that there is maybe, and this is what I understood, like from Itil Adnan, maybe there is a way to activate, to shift, to dearrange senses, so other possibilities can happen, and then the eye will follow. Like the eye will come. So that's somehow the way I kind of, that quote struck me. Like it struck me rather as something concerning the current moment, and not specifically something which comes from a certain, like cultural past or something. Yeah.
Is this possibility of reading both way, in a metaphorical way, like in dark times we have, but also in a physical way. But of course the two aspects maybe are connected, that we have to, our senses have to be more acute, more sensitive, as an animal would do, that have a stronger sense of hearing than human beings usually. And they are more able than us to live in a dark space, but also in a space where senses are able to guide strongly with the ear, with the tactile prosthesis. And so what I think is beautiful, that you can read it in both the sense, but basically, as I read it, it calls this phrase for increasing capacity of our senses, or asking for our senses be more sophisticated.
Absolutely. And in Itil Adnan's poem, there is a stress on this particular meaning, like the how the senses should be sharpened to the night. And she speaks also about the animals in the evening, in the night. And so absolutely. Like
I think what is interesting, that the animals are feeling that it's getting dark, mosquitoes are coming, and I don't know if this is a sign for us to, because I start to feel but sorry, I don't want to stop the conversation, but.
I just have like a quick comment, which I think, like has something to do with the workshop tomorrow, like just a response to, like readability, visibility. You were speaking about readability, visibility a little bit, no? And I think in certain moments, senses, they become drenched in bleach, right? Like bleach of attention economy, bleach of, like many different things. So sometimes, like one has to do something to start to sense again, right? Like so sometimes, you know, like the eyes and the ears, because they are drenched in, you know, like jelly of bleach, which kind of does not say anything, but, you know, like it just takes all the time your attention and your senses. So maybe at these points, you know, like, or at these moments, you know, like it's necessary to try to undo this, to start sense again, to start see again, to start listen, to start hear things again.
Absolutely.
Ok, thank you Haytham, e thank you all. Io... no. Ok. No, volevo ringraziare Amalia Rossi, che è dovuta andare via perché aveva un treno da prendere, perché come sapete ci sono un po' di disordini anche sulle ferrovie in questo momento. La doveva assolutamente tornare a Pavia e quindi ci saluta e lascia i suoi più cari saluti. In realtà credo che l'intervento di Amalia Rossi sia stato particolarmente interessante per noi, perché innanzitutto ha aperto lo sguardo anche verso chiaramente prospettive di indagine rispetto anche all'utilizzo attivo dell'ascolto come strumento di ricerca, anche a partire da esperienze diverse, da quelle a cui siamo forse più abituati qui, che riguardano più appunto la letteratura, l'arte, la performance. E soprattutto perché comunque ha posto in connessione l'idea di ascoltare, anzi la pratica di ascoltare, con una pratica che riguarda il corpo e tutti i sensi, proprio perché in qualche modo appunto lo spazio di ricerca è costituito dall'intersecarsi di tante traiettorie. E queste traiettorie sono fatte, come dicevamo anche stamattina nel workshop, da tante forze e da tante storie che vengono raccontate fino al momento presente. E questa è un'idea di spazio di una geografa femminista, Doreen Massey, alla quale io sono molto legata, e credo che sia interessante proprio questa intraconnessione che lei proponeva tra tutti i vari sensi, e l'idea di ascolto non soltanto organicamente connesso proprio con l'orecchio, con un ascolto cocleare, ma in generale con un ascolto tattile, con un ascolto olfattivo, con un ascolto emozionale anche. Ovviamente questo va oltre la possibilità di poter controllare l'oggetto di studio, ma forse è proprio anche questo il senso di una conquista, di un passaggio di cambio di senso, appunto. E quindi ringrazio Amalia Rossi, e se avete delle domande per lei sarò felice di mettervi in contatto via email. Tra l'altro Amalia insegna sia in NABA sia qui a Ca' Foscari a Venezia, per cui sicuramente potete facilmente entrare in contatto con lei. Volevo aprire l'ultimo spazio di conversazione a partire dall'intervento di Piersandra, e ovviamente lascio la parola a qualcuno se avete delle osservazioni o dei commenti, altrimenti io comincio, do il via e poi proviamo a intavolare qualche pensiero. Piersandra, va, prego.
Innanzitutto, anche io sono un grande estimatore di Sadie Hartman e penso che sia una pensatrice veramente, cioè, che ha con un apporto veramente davvero tipo decisivo per come siamo adesso, per lo stato delle cose, e rispetto al discorso sulla fabulazione critica. Un pensiero che ho avuto leggendo il suo lavoro, comunque facendo ricerca su di lei, avvicinandomi a lei e alla sua ricerca, è questa dimensione di scrittura, parlando dell'esperienza di altri, però senza reali informazioni, cioè senza un apparato concreto di informazioni da rimodulare, cioè da riordinare, un po' come scrivere la biografia di qualcuno. Tendenzialmente lo si fa attraverso della documentazione. In questo caso lei, diciamo che fa un processo che forse è anche più soggettivo, cioè lei parla anche della sua esperienza, cioè lei parla partendo dalla sua esperienza, cercando di parlare dell'esperienza altrui. E quindi questa dimensione cioè di scrittura critica che parte da una dimensione soggettiva, però tipo in un certo senso meticciando la propria esperienza con quella dell'altro, è un qualcosa che mi interessa molto, e quindi volevo sapere magari se appunto se ci sono altri pensieri o comunque qualcosa legato appunto a questa dimensione proprio di comunione nella narrativa, nella costruzione di archivi.
Grazie per questa domanda. Allora, da dove partire? Senz'altro cioè bisognerebbe ripartire un po' dal discorso del discorso degli annales della storiografia contemporanea, cioè il mestiere di storia, con l'interrogazione che si faceva Mark Bloch su che cosa vuol dire scrivere la storia, e su quella rivendicazione che lui faceva rispetto alla possibilità che la scrittura della storia sia in qualche modo legata a qualcuno che scrive e che è posizionato in un dato momento. Però vorrei come dire, proporre un'interferenza con le prospettive femministe che hanno in qualche modo riposizionato la necessità dei saperi di essere situati, penso appunto a questo scritto di Donna Haraway che appunto Situated Knowledge di fine degli anni '80, quando lei proprio riflette sulla possibilità di una teoria critica che non sia, come dire, che non declini verso le forme del relativismo, per cui ogni prospettiva singolare è possibile, ma che non sia neanche soggetta a quell'idea di una prospettiva universalistica, universalizzante, per cui c'è un sapere che è valido per tutti, no? È sempre un sapere in qualche modo incarnato. E quindi da lì nasce poi la politica del posizionamento, the politics of positioning where I am now, da dove parlo, no? Per me, per esempio, le questioni della vocalità che mi interessano sono molto collegate da dove parlo, qual è la posizione che ho, che rapporto ho con il potere nel momento in cui proferisco parola su un certo argomento. E quindi credo che in qualche modo potremmo tracciare una genealogia che va in questa direzione. Forse vorrei convocare anche Michel Desartaux, che sulla scrittura della storia, che alla scrittura della storia ha dedicato una grandissima riflessione, trovando un modo tutto suo di in qualche modo far convergere certe riflessioni anche agli antipodi, no? Voglio dire, riesce a mettere insieme Jacques Lacan e Foucault, quindi insomma, però al di là di questo, appunto, la scrittura della storia che è sempre una scrittura fictional, è sempre una scrittura in qualche modo che ha a che fare con la finzione, con la pratica della scrittura, no? La scrittura mentre scrivi, inventi e in qualche modo produci sapere nel momento in cui lo fai. L'aspetto che credo sia importante sottolineare nel caso di Saidiya Hartman è che la sua non è una scrittura che possiamo liquidare come soggettiva, perché è una scrittura che è innervata di sapere storico, è una scrittura appunto che si colloca negli archivi lacunosi, cioè appunto di questa Venus, nel famoso scritto Venus in Two Act, per cui lei propone due possibili versioni della storia. Appunto è come un procedere per tentativi e rivendicare anche la possibilità, no? Di suggerire delle opzioni di come quella storia può essere forse andata, e quindi nell'impossibilità della ricostruzione storica suggerire dei possibili. Ma appunto è il suo lavoro radicalmente da storica, le fonti storiografiche, sa come sono andate le cose in quel momento, che cosa succedeva dentro quelle navi, come i corpi venivano trattati, come le donne che si rifiutavano di fare certe cose erano dominate. E quindi diciamo anche tutta una serie di tracce minime, appunto di microstoria, di microdettagli che permettono di suggerire appunto una dimensione verosimile di come le cose possono essere andate, che è un modo di interrogarle, ed è ovviamente nel caso di Saidia un modo per mettere in evidenza, mettere in primo piano le forme di dominazione della tratta transatlantica e di mettere in evidenza il fatto che quella storia è una storia fatta di buchi, una storia fatta di lacune, una storia dove le voci delle persone schiavizzate non hanno avuto modo di emergere, e quindi è anche un modo per dire che quegli archivi sono degli archivi che vanno considerati problematici per il rapporto di violenza che hanno con il potere che in esso è iscritto. Quindi una soggettività che però appunto non è una forma di relativismo, ma una forma, come dire, di rivendicazione di una postura, che è una postura strettamente connessa ad una consapevolezza critico-teorica, che questo mi sembra il dato fondamentale, anche un po' nei casi che riportavo, il fatto che entrambi siano degli studiosi che non fanno un'operazione di autofiction, si spostano da quella dimensione che giustamente è una dimensione importante per processare e risituare i saperi, ma loro proprio in qualche modo inventano anche delle figure fittizie, e però gli archivi che propongono che riattivano, diciamo così, perché la dimensione del reenactment è in qualche modo una questione che riguarda anche il lavoro di Saidia, no? Questa reenactment di una scena che nessuno ha raccontato. Mi sembra importante dire che appunto in entrambi i casi la ricostruzione storica, storiografica di quei fatti che non sono raccontati da quella prospettiva, è un elemento importante e radicale.
Ci sono altre osservazioni o commenti?
I wanted to have just like a comment, because I took some notes also like before of what Pier Sandra was saying, also of the role of fictionality in that, because of course in Hartmann, in Lose Your Mother, she's bringing this failure of the archive also, and the of the historical documentation, and the role of fiction, and how fiction can help actually in connecting different sources and reenacting these different sources. And I was also interested to know like how the second example that you brought of Metin Garsten, also she's also in a way elaborating an archive, and an archive of the body, and also like recalled me also of the practices of Tarantismo, for example, no, of this dance, hysterical dance that is that the woman enacts when is out of control, let's say, out of control of the man, probably. But then how, what is the role of then fiction in her artistic practice, I would say, because then she obviously like reenacts these dances, but yeah, I was just curious if you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
So thank you for the question. Tarantism is in fact a very big part of the story of the Coromania, and in fact in this very important book by Kalina Godman, there is an analysis of this phenomenon, and this. So what is important to say in the case of Ingvartsen is that she was studying all this phenomenon where this phenomenon can affect the body, and where the behavior of the body, the perception from the local community, and all the maneuvers or control that are described in this story. The fictional dimension that I recognize in her practice is that she's telling a story, I mean, through narration that is tattooed with this dimension of vocality, but also in the part, because I didn't went in detail before, but she started to speak in first person, inventing how these people were feeling, you know, how the situation were in that specific moment for the people that were involved in this phenomenon. So the idea of contagio, the idea of being controlled by I will say, the not policemen, because they were not policemen, from the governor of the city. And also, I mean, there is a very important part in this story that is related with the idea that the body, because it is, in fact, and there is very important in Mette's work, the relationship, the posture, the position that is looking at this story from a female position. So it's questioning this aspect, and so we can understand that the voices that take place in this sympathetic space that is building up during the performance, in fact, is a female voice speaking from the past. So she situated herself in the past, speaking from the Salpêtrière, speaking from from the Great Depression in North America, you know. And so this is the way she's looking at this phenomenon, from a situated position that is, of course, related to the social and political analysis of the phenomenon. So in that sense, so it's a way of untangling, to put together, to untangle the history and the discursive dimension of this history and situated position. So in this balance, I recognize, in fact, a form of critical fabulation. Yeah, I would say this. One of the reason, because its story, it's interesting, is one of the come dirlo anche in italiano, non mi viene neanche in italiano, una delle ragioni una delle cause che viene riconosciuta per l'insorgenza della coromania is il sangue caldo, the hot blood. The hot blood. So she analyzed, for example, what this hot blood means, related to the Hippocratic tradition, related to il ciclo mestruale, the period, the woman period. So, I mean, in the way of speaking about this phenomenon, there is much of analyzing the discursive medical story that is hidden in this way of conceiving and regulating the female body. Thank you, Piersandra. Okay, some other things?
Ok, io credo che possiamo concludere qui questo pomeriggio intenso, approfittando di questo raggio di sole. E desidero davvero ringraziarvi tutte e tutti ancora una volta, perché ci stiamo riuscendo, stiamo costruendo degli spazi di ascolto e di condivisione che sono spontanei, ma anche molto sentiti e molto portati oltre da un certo punto di vista, quindi a diverse dimensioni, diversi livelli. Quindi ringrazio tutti e tutti e vi do appuntamento a domani. Iniziamo il programma sempre alle 3 e ci sarà appunto un intervento di Pedro Olivera, un intervento di Brandon Labelle e una performance sonora di Valentina Magaletti. E per chi di voi invece vuole partecipare al workshop con Haytham, l'appuntamento è domani alle 11, sempre qui.
Grazie a tutti.